Who's coming back after on demand since his last highly popular part one of this series on numismatic terms and abbreviations.
Well, welcome. Like Carl said, my name is Jim McDermott. I gave part one last time. I started out by saying if you watch Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, this is somewhere in between. When I started this, I started out looking at about 10 or 15 things of terms and different references that I didn't know. So I went through the Red Book and a couple other references and wrote down a list, and I thought I was going to do 20. The part one and part two actually contain 42 different items involving currency and coins. So the test tonight is I have 20 of them, and I'm betting on one that you will not get. Now, the last time I was here, I had 22, and you got them all. So it just goes to prove that the amount of knowledge that this club has is amazing. And some of the ones that, when I did the research on them, it took me a long time to understand and find out what they were talking about. But we have a very talented group here. So we're going to start out. And what we're going to do, Joe, if you can give me the first one, I'm going to give you an abbreviation or a number. And you can tell me what this stands for, what particular coin or series of coins it's a reference to. It may be a number from a famous person who's very good at cataloging a certain type of coin. So you're going to have to be able to tell me what type that coin is. And then I'll be able to give you a little description of who that person is in the book that they catalog the information for. FSB.
Full split bundles.
Full split bands. Okay, now, what does it pertain to?
Mercury dimes.
Mercury dimes. Now, what's interesting about this, I've given a talk about Mercury dimes, and a lot of people are confused as to what full split bands mean. Okay, a lot of times you'll see it at a dealer's table, bands. Well, the Mercury dime has 3 bands on it, on the axe part of it. And if you look at the coin, the most square is going to be in the middle band because that's where your thumb or forefinger picks up the dime. So what you really want to look for is for a full split band. Here you see in the middle how weak it is. You don't see the individual line going through the middle bar, where here it's more distinct. Now you say, well, what does that really mean? Price-wise, the next slide will show the difference in some prices between an MS-60, which is a beautiful coin, and one that has full split bands. Now, of course, you know the 1916 D is a very valuable coin. It's $25,000, but the value jumps up to $42,000. If you look at a more common coin, like the 1934, it goes from $60 to $165,000. And then what caught my attention was this 1945. Apparently there was very few stripes that had full split bands. And when I was looking at these sources for the prices, I actually looked at 2 or 3 places because I think it was kind of hard for me to comprehend it. If your coin would go from $22 to $15,000, but that's what it is. Now, who's going to pay for that? I don't know, but that's what the series shows.
Is it affected by dings or bag marks? Like the steps on a nickel?
Well, anything is going to affect the condition or the surface of the coin. But most of the coins that have a full split band, you're going to see on the obverse a pretty polished picture. It's not going to be dinged up or banged up. And the same with the reverse. Most of these coins are going to be MS-64 or 65 with full split bands.
What I mean is, would it be affected right on the full bands if there's a ding? You know,
Yeah, a person that's going to pay this kind of money is going to want a full band.
with no bag marks?
No bag marks or anything on it. So, radar note, currency. I know Joe knows this.
It's a serial number.
What about the serial number?
It reads backwards as it does forwards.
Okay, it reads backwards and forwards. Next slide, Joe. Now here's a primary example. Some people call it reflected serial number, but in this case you'll notice 5590 and then it goes 0955. So I know there's a number of people in here that collect currency. There's a few people, when they get in line, they always look at their dollars just to see what they are, and they're pretty interesting. I never knew what a radar net was, but I do now. Bugs Bunny. What is it? Okay, but what type of coin is it on? Franklin. What year? 55. Okay. Now, this is a popular variety of Franklin, and what you want to notice is, and it's kind of hard, I always have to use a loop to see this a little bit better, but this is the normal Franklin, and you can see that the lips and the chin come down fairly good. But there's, on the Bugs Bunny one, they actually look like little teeth, and they're sharp. But I have a hard time seeing it without a loop, but it's an interesting variety for the Franklin half dollars. They're not that very expensive unless you get them in MS 60 or 63 or 65. Snow number. What does it pertain to?
Indian cents.
Huh?
Indian cents.
Okay. Indian head cents. Joe?
What's it mean?
Okay. Richard Snow, who appears at most of the big coin shows, particularly anybody who goes to Baltimore, he's there. He specializes in flying eagles and Indian head cents. I have a collection that I really do like Indian heads and flying eagle cents. And what he's done is he's put together a catalog, a very nice catalog, which you'll be seeing soon. But it shows all the variety of Indian head cents. Now, this particular one is from 1859, and it's called a Snow 3. And how he numbers these is that when he finds a variety, the first one is Snow 1, Snow 2, but it'll be by year. So in 1859 it will be, starts out 1 through whatever, and then a 60 will start out with 1 there and go on. Some dates have as many as 15 varieties. I like his catalog. There's some information on YouTube about how to grade the Indian head coins. But the next slide will show you some reference material. These two books, this one from Whitman, produced by Red Book, was authored by Richard Snow. And what I liked about this one, in the middle of this new book, there's about 100 different varieties of the most common ones that have varieties to it. And if you buy the book, he'll autograph it for you down at Baltimore. Now, 2 years ago, he put out a 2-volume set. And for us old people, this is great. The pictures on here are about this big. Even I can see them. Okay? So when you're sitting at home one night and you have an adult beverage beside you, you turn this book and you can see all the individual varieties that they have. Plus he gives you a description. He rates them from 1 to 5 stars as far as rarity. But you can go crazy. I need a loop for most of these, but a lot of people go to stores and look through the junk box of Indian head cents, and you'd be surprised of the number of overdates and variations that you can find. But both of these books are very good. This one's about $18 or $20. This one, he started out at $250, but it goes on sale for $199. But if you ever want to really get serious about collecting flying eagle or Indian head cents, these are the books to get. He also gives us this year he's given a seminar out at A&A on these particular coins.
Jim, a question.
Yeah.
Do people pay money for some of these varieties, or? Is it
Oh yeah, some of the varieties are really big. There's an issue, I think it's 1888 over 7. It's very, very expensive. There's a common one, it's a 1894, and there's a little like lump sticking out of the person's throat. Even in good or very good, you're getting $75 or $80 for a coin that would be worth 60 cents to $1. Now, if it gets to be extra fine and better, you're talking $300 or $400. A lot of people will go for the overdates because there are quite a few of them there. Now, some of them have varieties in the rim, which I have a hard time seeing. But there are a lot of people that, and then there are also, on the earlier issues, they have a clash. Some were stamped over a quarter or a dime, and they're really hard to see. But usually you can buy those from at PTSC or NGC, and they should be slabbed because they're hard to see. But they're expensive too. But there are a lot of varieties, and it's a nice thing to look through, especially if you like Indian heads. A repeater note. Anybody idea?
Serial number that first 4 digits are repeated in the second 4 digits.
Okay.
1975.
As Joe has mentioned, you'll notice here 8136, 8136. So the note repeats. Another interesting thing to look for if you have passing time, you're standing in line, you want to look at bills. There was probably 10 or 15 different varieties of these types of notes that were broken up between part 1 and part 2. But this is a repeater note. 5 or 6 steps.
Jefferson.
Jefferson Nickel. Okay?
It's like full bands.
Now, I got this from a good source, NGC and PTSC. They want to see these coins in MS60 or above. If you have any Jefferson Nickels, they can be worth quite a bit more money if you have 5 or 6 steps. But they're very peculiar about the grading on these, and I'll be showing you what those steps look like. What they say in here is if the steps have even the slightest weakness, so you can have the first 3 steps great, the last step, if that middle one or the 4th step is just a little bit blurry, they're not going to give you the status for full steps. The next chart will show you here, it's not as clear, but the steps would be, this is probably a better example. You'll notice each individual step is very clear. One of the things for grading these, the steps and right above the columns here usually wear quite a bit. But they can be worth quite a bit of money. There are people who only collect 5 or 6. Now, depending on the grading service, some of them will put FS, and some of the older ones would actually put 5 steps or 6 steps. But it depends on the type of slab that you get. Now, this one, the previous one was 5, and again, this shows the 6 steps, and you see how each one is individual, and most of the wear will be right in here if you see a coin and it doesn't justify the 6 full steps.
Can I ask a question again? My question comes about bag marks. Does that affect any of these when they're?
Well, what the grading services
lines.
had mentioned there, the coin has to be MS60 and above. So if it fits that bill, then I would say it would probably be accepted as a 5 or 6 steps.
Because you could have one that's been completely uncirculated and be mint state, but it has bag marks because of the minting process. That's what I always wonder. Anything that just interrupts the line.
Well, I
Cannot
think,
If it's a bag mark,
I think
it'll just be a lower
grade.
grade.
I mean,
But if it's mid-state, it's still mid-state.
yeah.
It would be maybe just an MS60.
Most of the ones that I've seen that are marked 5 or 6 steps are pretty clear. They don't have too much distractions either on the obverse or reverse. I mean, they're pretty clear. And if it does have bag marks, it's probably going to have a lot less better condition than some of the others.
But you could have bag marks on coins that have never been circulated and definitely fall into mint state category.
Sure.
They might not be a 65, but they could be a 60, 63.
Well, one of the things looking through the grading books, they say one of the things that you do when you pick up the coin, you have to look at the coin's appearance to you. In other words, some people say just don't hold it flat out or look at a loop. Turn it around and look at the obverse and reverse, the open fields. Because if you have dings on certain places, for example, on a Morgan dollar, if you were to have a ding, you have a beautiful coin, a full breast on the back, but if you have a ding right on the person's cheek,
Yeah.
it's going to take away from the value, and people aren't going to pay the amount of money for it, even though it might be a MS 63 or 64. Now, if it's on the rim or it's on the reverse, it's in a part of the field that's not noticeable, then it probably won't make that much difference. Now, again, this is just a price comparison of some Jefferson Nickels. Again, most Jefferson Nickels is a very good collection to start. We had one member in here that actually got all of the Jeffersons from 1938 up to about 65 or 68, whatever was in the Dansko album, and he found them all in circulation in 4 years, which I find kind of hard to do. But you can buy a lot of these in MS65. They're very reasonable, and you don't even have to buy them in slabs. But then again, let's just look at if you get one with full steps. A 38D jumps from $19 to $100. A 49 is one of those again where it's particularly hard to find one with full steps. It's $2,500. Again, I don't know who's paying $2,500 for a nickel, but I guess there are people who want them because they're rare and few far in between. 3.5 legs. What year? And what year in mint?
37.
Okay. 36D. Again, in part one we talked about the other buffalo head nickel, but this one has 3.5 legs, and what's different about this and how it's easy to look at is you'll notice right here part of the buffalo's leg is missing, and this is supposed to be a blow up, and you'll see just a piece of molten metal here, but the other fourth leg is not distinct. Now, this is another coin. 1936 is a high mintage buffalo head nickel, but if you were to find one of these, a true the 3.5, they can go anywhere from $600 in good to $12,500 in MS60. So when you look through your buffalo head nickels, you want to make sure it has a good date, but if you find one, you're going to be a very lucky person. Pickaxe.
It's a Mercury value, isn't it?
No. I'll give you a hint. It's one of my favorite coins. Okay, let's see this slide. It pertains to 1870 Indian head cent. And I thought some of you would get this. This is another coin that if you're looking through some Indian heads, the 70s are still pretty cheap. But when you talk about a pickaxe, you'll notice right here, this piece of molten metal that comes down, it's a variety, and they're pretty expensive. In MS60 or 63, they can go up to $1,500, $1,800. So it's a nice coin to look at. I started looking for this. I do have one of these. When Longacre started putting his L on here, the L used to be right around here, but it took me a while to find out that I actually had a pickaxe, 1870 Indian head cent.
Do you know if it's engraved in the die, or is it by damage?
I don't know. I think the die itself was damaged, but it's an interesting variety. But most people don't know about it. There's probably 3 or 4 dealers. George from Penny Pounds and Pesos was one of the first ones to show me this, and it's a very interesting variety. Again, if you're looking through some Indian heads and you happen to find one of these, you're a lucky person. FH. Full head. What's it pertain to?
Standing liberty.
Standing Liberty Quarter. Okay. Now, these are beautiful coins. If you find one in like extra fine or AU, they're a beautiful coin. But there's always a lot of wear on the date, and one of the things that also receives a lot of use or The head itself, if you find one with a full head, they're worth quite a bit of money. And some people really love these coins. They're a nice set to collect. They're not that expensive, except for the, I think it's the 1916, of course, you a penny, a fortune, but the next one, Jim? Again, this is just a price comparison of what some of these coins would cost. Again, we're talking MS-65. These coins are a lot more reasonable. Most of the ones in the series, if you're getting good or very good or fine, they're not that really expensive. But again, looking at the price, the coin will jump from 500 to 850, or in the case of 1921, which is a much rarer coin anyway. And a lot, buffaloes have a history of having not a full strike. So if you find a coin with a full strike, and you have, or excuse me, not buffalo, but Liberty quarters, if you find one that has a full strike and a full head, it's going to be worth quite a bit of money. Shorter note. Come on, Pam, you know what this is.
Short snorter,
Short snorter.
yeah.
Fine.
Okay, what is it?
Well,
It's signed.
it's a note that people sign as a memory note. It started out in the war. People would sign them, like all of the officers on a plane would all sign one. If Bob Hope came to do a show, he'd sign some notes for people. A lot of famous people have signed them. A friend of, and most of them are military people that do it, but I have a friend who recently got married about 10 years ago, and they got world notes and put them in a long, long strip of about 30 or 40 notes, and all the guests at the wedding signed.
Okay. Pam is 90% correct. What I found out is this is a shorter note, and what it is, as Pam had mentioned, people write their names on it. But what I really found out was interesting. This started out in Alaska with the bush pilots, and they would sign the notes. And the thing was, when they got together, and the deal was, if you were asked to present this note with these people's names, if you had it, you were fine. If you didn't, you had to give them $1 or buy a drink. And then from here, it carried on into the military, and it really got big because most of the people, like Pam had mentioned, this is a big thing. You'll find a lot of short snorter notes around. But they're interesting because of the number of people who sign it. Sometimes you'll see 3 signatures, sometimes you'll see 5 or 10. But I was interested to discover that they originated with the bush pilots in Alaska.
You know something interesting about those? Every once in a while you hear about somebody who just picked them up in junk boxes. And it turns out there were very famous people who signed them.
Okay. Okay. So I would imagine, like you mentioned, Bob Hope, if you found one with a note like that on it, it'd be very interesting and be nice to have. Yeah. High relief.
1907,
$20 gold piece.
Okay.
St. Gordon's.
Okay. And there's one other coin that has a high relief. Anybody know what it is?
21 piece dollar.
21 piece stock. Ah, go on, Bob. You're good. You're good.
I keep telling my wife I'm the best.
Yeah. We won't go into that.
But she keeps on laughing.
it's full head.
Okay, as two of the members had mentioned, this is the gold piece that everybody recognizes right away with high relief. But as Bob has said here, there's also a high relief for the peace dollar. And what it is the relief stands out from the base of the coin. And it's particularly harder to make, but you get a very good strike. I don't have a $20 gold piece, but I'd like to have one. I think they're beautiful. And if you find one that is high relief, it really is a nice, impressive coin.
They're easy to find.
It's when they,
They're easy to find. I'm saying buy them.
No,
You
I
got to
say
come
buy
up with the
'em.
money.
I said find them.
No,
You got
they're
enough money, you can find them.
yeah. Anyway, they're a beautiful coin. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to afford one. But
they already produced it too, to offer it for a commemorative. I forget what year, but in the 2000 something, they reissued the $20 gold piece with high relief.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
They are beautiful
Was
coins.
it 2000? I have one.
They're expensive.
Low leaf, high leaf.
Wisconsin quarters.
Huh?
Wisconsin quarter.
State quarter, what,
It's
Denver.
Wisconsin. He said Wisconsin.
it's a Denver, Maine, but what's the state?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, correct.
Cheeseheads.
All right, everybody's collected state quarters. It was probably one of the biggest promotions by the U.S. Mint. I think everybody, when they first came out, still has the boards, and we still give them out to children. They're very popular. You can buy boards that only have the 50 coins, and then there's others that have all of the mints. But this 2004 Wisconsin quarter is one of the biggest varieties that came out, and it can be a nice find if you find one. This is the original Wisconsin 2004 D, and you'll notice that the corn leaf, and then they talk about a low leaf and a high leaf. The low leaf, you don't see it here, but the low leaf comes down here, and of course the high leaf goes up and touches the other part of the leaf. Now, of course the high leaf is worth a little bit more money, and I've seen these in a number of sets, anywhere from MS63 to 66, and I've been looking for one. NGC and PGS a long time ago used to have capital holders with these with all three coins in it. So you have the regular one, you have the low leaf and the high leaf. It's pretty nice. I still haven't gotten these, but I would like to get one of each in a slab. Well, I'd like to get all three of them in a slab because it'd be nice to compare. But once you understand where the low leaf and the high leaf comes, they're pretty easy to recognize. And you can probably actually see it without a loop, so it's pretty nice.
There's a bunch of them in the Nickels too, for the Lewis and Clark series, for the last, second to last or last one in 2004.
Okay.
There's all sorts of added leaves.
Okay. Does anybody have an idea what this number represents? Okay.
Broken banknote?
No. Joe? This relates to a Civil War token, better known as a pencil. Well, they're put out by many different states, but they're what they're called store card. When the Indian Head Cents and some of the other ones were hoarded by people, a lot of vendors and different people would put out their own currency or coins. This particular one happens to be for the Dancing Academy in Philadelphia. And as a matter of fact, we have one here. It's going to be a door prize. And it's also for Philadelphia. So if you're interested, it's great. Now, the interesting thing about this, there's a number of what they call die sink makers. In other words, people who made the dies, and particularly Indian heads or flags or those type of things, they were put on many different coins from many different states. Some people collect the tokens. I tried to collect ones from Pennsylvania, and particularly Philadelphia, but there's a lot of other states, Connecticut, New York. There's probably about 28,000 different store tokens out there. What drives the rate or the price on a lot of these is the metal. If you find one in an off metal, and again the rarity. They can go anywhere from R1 to R9, and they can be quite expensive. Now, this is a book that is also put out by Whitman, the Red Book. It's very good. It shows you probably a good sampling of some from each of the states. It also talks about the different die sink makers, so you can get a good education there. Now, the one that I like better is it's U.S. Civil War store cards, and this is put out by the Civil War Token Society. There's some magazines in the back there. This volume is about 400 or 500 pages. It goes by the number that you sold up there, PA, meant it's for the state of Pennsylvania. 750 happens to be the number for Philadelphia. And then the last two digits, 16A, is a Philadelphia coin, the 16th version of that. Now, the interesting thing is there are different versions of that same coin. Again, if they're in a North metal, brass, copper, if you find one in silver or gold, they're really, really expensive. But both of these books are very good, as a good example to start. You always talk about buy the book before you buy the coin, but this is a good start if you get involved. The other thing is, I belong to both of these organizations. They're very cheap to join, $25, $30. The other thing is you can buy books from them for particular states, like if you want store tokens for Ohio, they'll have the book on it. And you can go online. The other thing is they have catalog information here. If you want to distinguish between two different types of coins, these are a good place to start. Cherry Picker.
It's a book about all the dye varieties.
Okay, so a book about dye varieties.
Two separate volumes.
Okay, and we have a short definition here. It's a collector who finds scarce and unusual coins by carefully searching through unattended items in accumulation dealer stocks. These are usually the bargain bins. It can pertain to coins, metals, currency. One of the things that I found, if you go to the next slide, these are the most current ones. Volume 1 covers from half cents to nickels, and then the Volume 2 covers dimes to gold. These are excellent books. They summarize, there's probably about 150, 200 pictures at least in each of these. And you can get into particular denominations of coins, but this is a really good start. And these are the most current ones, and they give you a value of what the coins mean. Now, the other thing that's interesting that I never knew, we have a fellow who is a member of the club, doesn't come that often, his name's Matt Allman. And he's always at a lot of our shows, and he's also down at Baltimore. But what I didn't know, Matt is a major contributor to this. Not only that, but he is the one that sets a lot of the prices for the varieties. So I had asked him about it one time, and he was kind of bashful. He said, "Oh, it's no big deal." I said, "Well, these books are going out all over the place, and you're setting prices in here. It's just like a red book for a cherry picker's guide." So if you ever get a chance to talk to Matt, he's very good at diagnosing or looking at coins, and has a very good eye on seeing things. So if you have a coin and it's a D over S or S over D, he'll be able to tell you right off the bat it's a valid coin. But this is a nice set of coins, or books. These are about $20, $25 a piece. But if you collect any of these coins, you can flip through there, and it's nice to look through some of your change. Every once in a while, you'll find something from the Cherry Picker's Guide. Countermark.
Stamp on it.
Stamp on a coin.
There's a lot of them on trade dollars.
All right. I was very surprised. I knew about some of these, but I didn't know about ancient coins that got stamped like this. Carl's brought up many times and time about ancient coins, but the counter stamp was primarily used by another government to authenticate the coin. And some of the ones here, we have an ancient coin that has a counter stamp. We have a $1 George III that has a counter stamp. I know these are very expensive. I looked at one of these one time because I was intrigued about it, but when I saw the price. And then lately, this has been a pretty hot thing. In the Civil War times, or a lot of large cents were authenticated, or people put their advertising on it. Here you have A.S. Warner, issued 1845 over this large cents. So a lot of people have been collecting these, and you'd be surprised at the different vendors that you can find. I don't know if there's a catalog available on these, but if you go to any of the big shows, you can usually find at least 10 or 15 of these, and again, some people are starting to collect them pretty heavily. Ream number. Huh?
Complete encyclopedia of U.S. coins.
Right, Bob has it, Encyclopedia of U.S. Coins, and he has that, and he also was famous for his catalog for half cents from 1793 to 1857. Now, Breen is quite a character. When I started reading about him,
Keep your kids away from him.
huh?
Keep your kids away from him.
Yeah, well, as it turned out, he was in the war, and a bomb exploded, and he says as a result of that, he got a photographic mind. So when he started cataloging these coins, if you've ever looked at his books, they're very detailed. But he has some issues, as Bob had mentioned. A number of times he was arrested, and he finally did hard time. And what he got convicted of today would be messing around with young men. So as much knowledge as he had his own issues.
Also, that a lot of the information in his complete encyclopedia was made up.
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that if he didn't know, he knew. I mean, a ton of stuff. But if he didn't know something, he would make it up.
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
This is what I've read. I mean, I don't have first-hand knowledge. But what I read was he played fancy free with the facts.
Okay. Well, anyway, he has these two books on the half cents and then the Encyclopedia of U.S. Colonial Coins. I know a lot of people who collect half cents. His is like the Bible, because he was really the first one to justify or validate a lot of these different varieties. But again, he had his problems. Fortin number. This is a person that has done a lot of cataloging on a particular type of coin. This is the one that I hope you didn't get. Okay, so this represents Jerry Fortin. There's another person who goes to all the major shows, and he's down in Whitman. But his specialty is Liberty seated dimes. And I met him. He's quite an interesting guy. He retired. He's a computer programmer. But he also, what I like about him, he started this database or this website for seeded dime varieties. And I asked him, I said, why don't you just put out a book? He said, no, I didn't want to do that. He said, I can update this, and this is free. So if you want to find out anything about seeded dimes, this is the person to see. And I've bought a couple of coins from him for my typeset, and he's very, very interesting. But he has some really, really nice coins. But an interesting fellow. But this is the one I didn't think you would get. That's good. At least I got one on you. VAM number. Morgan Dollars. Who wrote the book?
Van Allen.
Bill Van.
Al's. Leroy Van Allen. I'm sure his name is.
All right, this is an example of a VAM. Now, I'll be showing you the books later, but what both these gentlemen did is that they started out with a year, 1888 of, and they started the VAM. The first variety they found would be VAM 1, 2, 3, 4. So on 1888 this is VAM 4, and this is a very popular series. It's called Hot Lips. Anybody have seen a MASH? Right here you can see the lips. So that's VAM 4. Now these are the two books that I've seen that I recommend. I have one of these. It's like a telephone book. Again, it's by Van Allen and George Malice. It's very detailed. I mean, there's got to be 300 or 400 coins in there for mortgage and peace. If you're really into peace dollars, that's the encyclopedia that you should have. But I also looked at this down at the Whitman show. This gives you the top 100 varieties, which I think is pretty good. The pictures in it are excellent, and it's a good starting point. if you later go into something a little bit more detail, you probably have to get this book. But this other one is pretty nice, and I like the pictures in the smaller one. This book, by the way, was retailing for about $85, and when I bought mine, I bought it on eBay from Canada, of all places, and it was $60. So if you look around, you can still find the book. All right, these three terms you don't usually see on certain types of coins, but they pertain to a particular type of coin. And you tell me what it would be used to grade.
Ancient coins, NGC.
Ancient coins. Carl got that. I've seen these in the Numismatic magazine and all the catalogs for some of the big auction houses. And the description up here that they give you is there's a lot more detailed information than you would find in just a regular slab from NGC. They actually show you the strike, the surface, and the style. And I really didn't understand what their grading meant, but the strike goes from 1 to 5. So you look at the coin, and whoever's grading it has to decide whether it would be what I would be equivalent of good to extra fine or AU. And then the surface. They look at the surface of the coin. Again, it's just like looking at the appearance on any coin that you look at and turn it around and see both the obverse and reverse to see what kind of condition the face is. And then the style. In other words, how much of the detail is in there and the quality of the engraving and composition. I know we have a lot of people in here who collect ancient coins, but you often see them off-center, or some of them, I wouldn't say mangled, but they're out of shape. And so if you find one that has a lot of detail like this, they classify this particular coin as XF with a surface strike of 5 out of 5 and a surface of 3 out of, I think, 3. So this is a pretty detailed coin. Battleship note.
$2 bill.
What is it?
$2, 1914.
$2 bill, 1914.
It's on the back of the reverse.
Okay. Joe got this right. I know it doesn't have a train on it, Joe, but you got the battleship. But this is a very popular note. People like these. Again, it's a series of 1918, a Federal Reserve note, and it was one of the last years that the large bills were made. And of course, it shows the picture of the battleship on the back. This particular issue was issued by all 12 of the Federal Reserve banks. So that ends the presentation. I'm glad I got you on one. I think I got you on two. But it's amazing the amount of knowledge that the people have, and I hope you enjoy it. And maybe we can get Dave to do one on currency, because I think he has more terms than I have, and I think he would do an excellent job. So thank you.